So, just go through the topic for today is health, pandemic. Mostly it will be broadly about health, but we'll talk about pandemic as well. So, there will be some pandemic specific topics that I'll tell you. And broadly, I'll talk about health and the issues and the challenges that we are facing and what can we do about it. So, just go to the slide of essays, do's and don'ts. I want you to remember this every time you write an essay. Every time you begin your essay, I want you to go through this thing and just remember these points when you start your essay, when you end your essay. I want you to have these points in your mind. So these points are very important. The first very point that I discussed yesterday, all those who were there yesterday, you know that I told you to structure the essay for the first 10 minutes. So give yourself 10 minutes to decide the structure of the essay. This is one of the do's that you have to do. And on the right column, you have the don'ts that you should remember. So, time management is another thing that you have to remember because the essay is dependent totally on time, how you manage it, and how well you utilize that time. Because you have to finish two papers, and it's not just essay, it's a translation, it's pressy, so you have to divide the time properly so that you finish everything properly. So, time management is another thing that you have to take care of. Third thing is you have to work on your presentation and handwriting. Because this is a language paper, it's a descriptive paper. You have to definitely work on your presentation because that will actually decide the interest level of the examiner. Okay, if he is interested to read it, if he cannot read your handwriting, then he will definitely not be interested in reading it. So make it easier for him to understand and make it easier for him to read. So it's important that we work on our presentation and on our handwriting as well. The fourth thing that I want you to remember is to maintain the consistent flow in your writing. And the fifth thing, I have talked about the flow and the transition words that you should use in your essays. So, this is what we are talking about here when we talk about the flow of writing. The fifth thing you should remember is the introduction and conclusion. As I told you yesterday, that your introduction and conclusion is going to play a very important role in deciding your marks. Okay, so these are the five things that you have to remember, and some things that you should not do is do not choose a topic that you're not comfortable with. You should know where to stop. As I told you, the limit is 400. You can go 500 to 600, but do not stretch it too much. You should know where to stop in this, also in the sense that you should know how many dimensions to explore of that topic. Just don't go about talking about different things and too many things. You should know how many things you want to focus on and limit yourself to those very things. Now, how will this happen? This will happen when you start writing, when you start practicing, when you write 2-3 essays. That is when you will understand that how much of importance and emphasis should I give on particular topic or particular dimension, and how much can I explore that dimension. The third thing you should remember is do not be extreme in your approach. I've always told you this. You are supposed to be a very balanced person. So do not be extreme in your approach at all. Just be very balanced, have a very balanced opinion, and stop being very critical or stop being very positive about things, but be balanced. Talk about the positives, but also highlight the negatives that are there in the given topic. Fourth thing that I've emphasized on yesterday also, that do not end on a negative note. Whenever you write a conclusion, see to it that it is futuristic, it is optimistic, and it is something that gives hope to the people. Okay. The fifth thing that I want you to do is do not talk about too many things. As I said, be concise. So I've already covered this. So do not talk about too many things. Be concise in your approach and know where to stop and how many dimensions to explore. So these are the do's and don'ts that you should remember before starting any essay, no matter which essay that is. It can be your English or Marathi essay, but you have to remember these points for both the papers. Now we'll start with health. These are some quotes. These are very basic quotes. You can add your own quotes to it, but these are some quotes that I came across and I think that I should share it with you. So add these quotes to your quotes, or you can improvise in these quotes and use it in your essay, but see to it that it is relevant. Now when we see the second quote, just go on the quotes the slide. So the second quote that we see is, healthy citizens are the greatest asset any country can have. Now this is not very specific to health, but it is specific to healthy citizens. So you should know where to use which quote. Now good health is not something we can buy. However, it can be an extremely valuable savings account. Now this is something you can use in any health topic, even if it's a general health topic or pandemic topic. You can always use the first quote, that is, good health is not something we can buy. However, it can be an extremely valuable savings account. The third is, health is wealth. We all know that. So these are three basic quotes that I think you should remember while writing your essay. Now definitions. Now WHO definition has a very big, it's very important and it has relevance till date. So you have to always follow definitions which are given by international organizations or by your country or by the government, government organization, or by the government itself. So these definitions have credibility. So we want something that is credible because we want examiner to know that you are a responsible person and you know what you're doing. So always use a definition. Now a topic like health would obviously require something that is substantial. So WHO definition is one thing that you should not miss when it is about health. So you have to mug it up or whatever, but you have to know the WHO definition. Yesterday I had told you to keep the definition simple, but when it is about health, I would like emphasize on you following this one definition. Matlab, it's like a compulsory thing that you have to write the WHO definition. So, WHO defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So, it is very simple. It is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well being. So, it has talked about three aspects of health, that is, physical, mental, and social well being, and not merely the absence of disease. So, just because you do not have a disease, it does not mean that you're healthy. You have to be physically, mentally, and socially active and healthy, and you have to feel that way. Only then can you be considered healthy. So, that is a very important definition of health. The second definition is, it's a basic and a simple one that I've given you. Its health is a state that allows the individual to adequately cope with all demands of daily life. It is also very simple and put in a very straightforward manner and a very nice definition. So you can use both the definitions or you can just stick to the WHO definition. But do not miss out on the WHO definition, is my advice to you. Health is a state that allows the individual to adequately cope with all demands of daily life. So, a very beautiful definition. I want you all to remember this as well. Now, when we talk about definition, this is one thing that you can start your essay with. Like I had discussed 5 ways yesterday that you can start your essay with. Now, I gave you quotes. This is one way you can start your essay with. The second way you can start your essay with is definition. So, it completely depends on the topic that you have. So, at the end of the lecture, I'll give you one topic, health specific, and you have to write an essay on that. So, I want to see how you can use all the data and all the pointers that I'm giving you. How do you use it in that specific topic? So now we're talking about health, but the topic will be something more than just health. So just brainstorm, think how can you use these different ways that I'm telling you, and how can you improvise in it, and how can you innovatively put it through. So this is the second way you can start your essay with is definition, straightforward definition. The third is my way of starting an essay, and this is how I have started any health related topic in my test series or maybe in some main exams as well. So this is what I used to do. I used to put together all the current related incidents or things that are happening in the health sector. So I'll read it out to you. Uh, this is very specific to pandemic as well. So when we talk about health today, you cannot miss out on pandemic. So whenever we are talking about health, we have to talk about pandemic. We cannot miss out pandemic. So even if it's a simple topic like health, if they just give you health in the exam, you have to mention pandemic somewhere. And I would have been a person who would start with the same thing. So this would have been my start. Footage of bodies lying next to the COVID patients, other patients suffering from diseases such as cancer, AIDS, TB, not getting treatment or healthcare due to COVID scare, beds not being available, and patients dying waiting for the beds, patients sitting outside the hospital with oxygen cylinder, ambulances not being available, just add available at the rural level. Mental health is also in crisis due to COVID related anxiety, depression, fear of pandemic. Pregnant women could not get the required healthcare facilities due to lockdown and social distancing norms. You can add norms here. So this is a very concise introduction. It shows everything that you want the pandemic to be, like everything about pandemic, the suffering, the crisis that it was, and it shows how our health infrastructure is struggling. I think you can improvise in this. This is not definitely not concrete, but I am just giving you an idea as to how you can start your essay with, because many of you face problems as to how to write and how to go about it, and many of you are scared of English. So this is a very simple way. If you see, I've not even used any fancy words, I've not even used any fancy vocabulary that you are scared of. I've just put simply, and my sentence is also very short, if you can see. I'm not complicating anything here. I'm talking about one thing and one thing alone. See, footage of bodies lying next to COVID patients. We have all seen this. Instead of footage, you can use videos, whatever, simple language. Then, other patients suffering from diseases could not get treatment or healthcare due to COVID scare. Even if you cannot like recollect scare, you can write COVID. Beds not being available, patients dying waiting for beds. It's a simple language, so keep it very simple but impactful. So I hope you're getting what I'm talking about here. And also, I have covered mental health. So it shows that I'm inclusive, right? You have to be inclusive, you have to be empathetic. That is all that we are testing. We everybody, like your examiner is testing your personality per se. So you have to be very inclusive, you have to be everything that an administrator is supposed to be, even while writing. So mental health is also in crisis, and there were many cases of anxiety, depression, and many of us have gone through it. And pregnant women could not get the required healthcare facilities. That is one thing which is optional. You can write it or you can skip it, but I think it's better if you write it, because it also shows that you know the ground reality. The next thing we'll go to is dimensions. Dimensions of good healthcare. Now, what does dimensions of good healthcare mean? So, dimensions basically only mean that what a good healthcare should be about. So, what do you mean by good healthcare? What is a good healthcare? Or what is healthcare? So, healthcare is something that is available, that is easily available. Now, what do you mean by availability? It's not same as accessibility. Okay, there is a big difference there. So, it has to first be available. So, do you have medicines? Do you have beds? Do you have hospitals? Do you have the infrastructure for the population that you have? We don't have, right? So we cannot call our healthcare as a good healthcare. So, what are the dimensions of healthcare? First, it has to be available. It has to be available for people. We have to have the beds that are required for 1.3 billion population. Then it has to be appropriate. What does appropriate mean? That it has to be up to the mark. The quality has to be good. It cannot be negligent in terms of quality. So availability is the first thing, that you put the go healthcare infrastructure out there. Like at rural levels, if you see, we do not even have the basic facilities. We do not even have the infrastructure. We do not, some villages do not even have a building for a hospital. So we do not even have the medical personnel, we do not have doctors, we do not have nurse. So the healthcare itself is not available. How are we going to suffice all these people and all the people who are suffering from COVID? So first thing first, it has to be available. Second thing, it has to be appropriate. That is, it has to be up to the mark. Okay. Now, third thing is accessible and affordability. Now, what does accessible mean? Uh, for example, if I stay in a village, like if I am from a rural area, and I want to go to the hospital. The very first hospital that I have is 30 kilometers from my place or 50 kilometers from my place, and in the worst cases, it's more than 100 kilometers from my place. So that does not mean that it is accessible. It's completely inaccessible for a person who is in emergency, who wants emergency treatment, who requires an emergency treatment, or who suffers a heart attack or something major. So it has to be accessible for people. Second thing, it has to be affordable for people. So in India, 70% of our out of the pocket expenditure is 70%, is close to 70%. So it is not, it simply means it is not affordable. So even if we have government hospitals, even if we have free services, even if we have free healthcare, it's still not affordable to people because most of our treatments are done in the private hospitals. And when we do it in the private hospitals, we have to pay a large amount of bills. So it has to be affordable for the population. Uh, Other thing is equity and equality. Both the things have to be there in the healthcare. Equity meaning people who are already from a backward or already depressed, already marginalized. Those people need to be given some sort of support or some sort of help so that they come into the flow of healthcare and they receive a good amount of healthcare. So when we talk about supposedly women, so women need to be given some special type of treatment because they have to go through pregnancy, they have problems in pregnancy, they can have complications, they have uh, issues which are different from the other population like anemia and malnutrition. So this has to be treated on a special basis. So that is what we talk, that is what equity means. Also the marginalized sections, the people who cannot afford, need to be given some sort of support, some sort of monetary help or some other kind of help, so that they come and they come and they take the healthcare and they come into the flow of healthcare. They are not shy about taking healthcare just because they cannot afford it. So that is what we talk about equity when we talk about equity. And equality meaning everybody should get good quality healthcare, not just the people who can afford it. So equality in the sense, uh, if today we see only people who can afford go to the private sector or private hospitals and they get the best of the best treatment, but this is not fair. So our healthcare has to be equal, it has to be equally distributed to all, not just to the people who can afford it. So that is about equity and equality. Then there is safety, so there has to be safe measures taken. When we talk about safety, it also means cleanliness. It also means that the the doctors have to be trained properly in that field. They need to know what they're doing and what they are they need to be expert in the field that they are working in. So that is what we mean by safety. Then amenities, meaning all the advanced technologies, all the advanced treatments, all the advanced medicines need to be provided, vaccines need to be provided at the very primary healthcare level, community healthcare centers. So amenities have to be there. So that is about the amenities. Then timeliness and continuity. So this should not be temporary. Now, what I mean by timeliness and continuity is that we wake up when there is a pandemic, which is wrong. Okay, we have to have a strong infrastructure, we have to have good healthcare continuously, consistently. Why only we should focus on jumbo centers or increasing the number of beds only when we have a demand for it? Right, we have to be very continuous in our approach to providing good healthcare, because pandemics are not going to end today. Pandemic is going to increase and it is going to multiply in the coming years, so it is definitely not going to stop here. So we have to be prepared for the future, and that is why timeliness and continuity is very important when we talk about good healthcare. So these are some of the dimensions of good healthcare. I hope you've understood each aspect. Now let's move on to the next slide. Now we'll talk about the issues and challenges. What are the issues that India is facing? So this will be India specific, because we are obviously talking about India here when we talk about health. First thing, population. Our population is 1.3 billion, which is too much. So we can definitely, it's hard for us to handle that much population and to make everything available to that population. So it's difficult for us to provide the amenities and the facilities to so many people. So population is a very big challenge for us, but we that cannot be an excuse. It is a challenge, but we have to somehow come over it and tackle the problem, and we have to find solutions for it. So population is one biggest challenge when it comes to health. Second is accessibility. There is regional disparity in provision of healthcare services. There is lack of primary healthcare centers in certain rural areas of the country. It is a fact, it is a reality. We all know that. Then, in the same, there is inadequate doctor to population ratio. Now, this is the ratio that we have for India. It is 1 is to 1456, whereas what WHO recommends is 1 is to 1000. So we are actually bad when it comes to doctor to population ratio. So we have to come close to at least 1 to 1000. And if we go down, then it's well and good, but at least we have to target to come in, come close to 1 is to 1000. It is 1 is to 1456, but sometimes it can, it also goes to 1 is to 1600, and some figures also show 1 is to 1800. But we'll stick to the official figure of 1 is to 1456. So it is bad. So we have to work on this thing. Then there is lack of public expenditure. So we do not spend, this public expenditure is not much. The budget is around 1.28%. I'll give the data ahead. There is data on this. Other challenge that we face is prices of drugs. So an average citizen in India spends a large amount of money on drugs prescribed. So this is a fact, because the prices of drugs are way too high. We have tried to solve this thing with the Pradhan Mantri Jan Aushadhi Yojana, but still we tend to spend a lot on drugs, and when I say drugs, I mean medicines. So do not misinterpret that. So that is what we are talking about. Medicines, tablets. We spend a lot. Out of the pocket expenditure on these things is a lot. So that is also a very big challenge. Then infrastructure. We do not even have the proper infrastructure. Infrastructure in the sense good quality buildings, X-ray, sonograms, everything that is required for health, everything that comprises of healthcare. We do not have that infrastructure still in place. We do not have ambulance, or we do not have, Ventilators, if we see pandemic situation, we did not have ventilators. We had a scarcity of oxygen cylinders. So this is what we talk about when we talk about infrastructure. We do not have ICU beds, we do not have normal beds. So this is what we talk about when we talk about infrastructure. Then tertiary hospitals, tertiary level healthcare is also not up to the mark. It is only available in the urban centers, only in the big cities. So that is where we are lacking when we talk about the infrastructure. Other thing is technical expertise. This is now Niti Aayog's report. So the Niti Aayog in its action agenda points out that India faces a huge challenge in the number, distribution, skills, and quality of health expertise. Now, if you just mention that Niti Aayog in its action agenda points out this, it is simple. Like, you substantiate your argument. If Niti Aayog has said something, that means it has credibility, and that means it is, you know what you're talking about, and you have a good evidence to justify whatever you are saying. So we always need such examples, such data, such figures from a credible source. So Niti Aayog is a very credible source. So if you write this, it means you are saying something that is a fact or something that is true. The other thing is mental health is still a neglected topic, a neglected sector. So we have to work on that as well, because mental health is still a stigma. People don't talk about it much. People are scared to talk about mental health. They find people stigmatizing when you talk about mental health. So we have to destigmatize mental health. We have to open up discussions on mental health, and we need people opening about their mental health and coming out and sharing their stories and getting help. So mental health is still a neglected sector. That is another challenge that we face. There's one more figure that you can add is there's no health insurance policy, or there is a minimal coverage. So that is also one thing that we lack. It is a bit pandemic specific, because the insurance coverage problem we faced due to pandemics, that is when we realized that everybody should have health insurance. So you can add that in your pandemic specific topic, or you can add it here as well. Like, it is one of the issue and the challenge that we face. We do not have health insurance policy. And one more figure you can add is 2.3% of the GDP's out of pocket expenditure on health. 2.3% of GDP is out of the pocket expenditure on health. That is one thing you can add. Now let's go to the next slide. Now, what has been done on this front? What have we done? What we have done is, we have National Health Mission, which was announced in 2012, which is covering all the villages and towns in the country. There are two sub-missions: National Rural Health Mission, National Urban Health Mission. Then there is Ayushman Bharat. So do not miss out on Ayushman Bharat, because it is a flagship program that we have, and we have to mention Ayushman Bharat because it recently completed 5 years, and it has been successful in its implementation according to the government data. So Ayushman Bharat is something that you cannot miss. Please mention Ayushman Bharat. Then there is National Rural Health Mission, National Urban Health Mission. There is Jan Aushadhi Yojana that I talked about. It's PM Jan Aushadhi Yojana, which provides affordable medicines and tablets to all the citizens. Not citizens, but the population. Then we have National Health Policy. Now, why National Health Policy is important? Because it is an expression of what the healthcare should be. So we are aspiring to reach where we should be actually. So National Health Policy is our vision. So we have National Health Policy 2017. I think there is a recent National Health Policy also that is coming up. So we'll wait for that. But right now we have National Health Policy 2017. Then there is Swachh Bharat Mission. Now, why Swachh Bharat Mission comes under health, I'll tell you. Because sanitation plays a very important role when we talk about health. So most of our problems in India is because of the lack of sanitation and proper hygienic conditions. So that is why mentioning Swachh Bharat mission is also becomes important, because it shows that the core problem of India as such. So it gives an idea of the ground reality basically. So Swachh Bharat mission is one thing that you should not miss again. Now, this is some data that I want you all to write down. You can use it or you can skip it, but there is two things that I don't want you to miss. One is the India spends only 1.28% of GDP as public expenditure on health. I do not want you to miss on this point, because this is very important. Our public expenditure is very less when it comes to health. And I also want you to compare it with other countries. So when you write your essay, I want a comparison with other countries, other developed countries like maybe USA or China, or whichever country which spends more on its healthcare and which has shown positive results in the health sector. So I want you to compare one thing, like the expenditure that other countries have on health. So do that. Now, birth rate has declined from 25.8 in 2000 to 20.4 in 2016. This data has been taken from National Health Profile, which is given out by the government. So it is a very relevant data. It is a credible data, so you remember it. Then death rate has declined from 8.5 to 6.4 per thousand. This is also between 2000 to 2016, so remember that. Then MMR is maternal mortality rate, which has reduced from 556 in 1990 to 130 in 2016, which is a very big achievement for us. I also want you to go through the MMR for Maharashtra. I think it is 68, but I want you all to check and also mention that, because when we talk about MPSC, we want you to know about Maharashtra figures as well. So remember that as well. Let's move forward to, let's come to the slide of way forward. And now these are some of the pointers that I'm giving you, but I want you all to add to this. This is not the end of it. You have to add your own points to this, and I want to see what all you can add to this. Okay, I want some innovative strategies to go about. I want some innovative ideas. I want some really grassroots level solutions from you all. So please do that. Please add to the way forward that I'm giving you. So first thing is enabling the preventive care. Okay, what does preventive care mean? So we go to the hospital only when we have a problem. Okay, so we in India or in many other places, we do not have we have a curative care basically. So we cure, like we have a disease and then we go to the hospital, but we do not have preventive care. We do not take measures to prevent something. So enabling preventive care means that you promote some good habits. You promote getting checked for breast cancer, for example. Getting checked for some type of cancers which can happen and which are which has high possibility to take place. So that is called preventive care. Be preventive rather than curative. So that is what I'm talking about when I say enabling preventive care. Second thing is bringing behavioral change. So what does bringing behavioral change mean? Cleanliness is first thing that comes to mind when we talk about behavioral change. So you have to be clean. You have to follow cleanliness. Uh, as we see in pandemic, we had to wash our hands. We had to wash our hands for 20 seconds. That was the rule. We had to wash it properly. So this is a behavioral change that has happened in people. Now, if you see, people will automatically wash their hands for a longer time than usual, because we are scared, or we had that fear of COVID. So this is a behavioral change, but this should have come in the earlier stage itself. It should not have been because of the pandemic, but it's good that we have it now. But it should have been preventive measure as well. Also, when I talk about behavioral change, what I mean is you have hygienic conditions, you focus on pay attention to the sanitation part. You also promote healthy living, uh, add an element of exercise to your lifestyle, change your lifestyle, uh, make exercise a very big part of it, control your dietary habits. That is what we talk about when we talk about behavioral change. Okay. Then there is cooperative federalism, which means that state government should be incentivized to invest in creating a dedicated cadre for public health at the state, district, and block level. So, when we talk about health, health has to be comprehensive, it has to be holistic. So, the contribution of center and the state has to go hand in hand, and that's why we require cooperative federalism, because there are some things that are provided by the central government to us, and then the state government can go ahead with it. So if we talk about pandemic, we have seen how vaccines were distributed. So a coordination between the center and the state is very important when we talk about health. Okay. The fourth thing that we talk about here is more funding. So the funding I had told you before, the figure is right here with us. If you go to the previous slide, it is 1.28% of the GDP 2017 and 18, but it should go up to 2.5% of GDP. That is the minimum required that we want right now. We have to go to 2.5% of GDP. The fifth thing that I want you to do is that would create a good healthcare is decentralization. So when I mean what I mean by decentralization is there has to be decision making at the very grassroots level, from the very panchayat level to the municipal corporation level. There has to be decentralization of healthcare or decision making. So during pandemic, we followed localized containment zones. So yeah, so when we followed the micro containment zone policy, people decided at the city or the district level whether they want to, about the containment zone, which should be the containment zone and how it should be. So this is what we talk about when we talk about decentralization. Dharavi model and Mumbai model is also one of the examples of decentralization of the decision making process. So there are some district specific problems, there are some city specific problems. So when we have to take care of such problems, we need decentralization of decision making. Then, very important, mainstreaming of Ayush, because Ayush is something that represents India. It is something that has been with us historically and since the very ancient times. So we have to mainstream Ayush. Even if you see in COVID, Ayush has helped us, and that's why we need to address the gaps in our healthcare services. We have to mainstream Ayush. I hope everybody knows what Ayush is, but I'll again repeat it for you. Ayush stands for Ayurveda, yoga, Ujjaini, Siddhi, and homeopathy. There's also naturopathy here, but it doesn't come in the full form, but yeah. So that is Ayush. So mainstreaming of Ayush is very important. The next thing is telemedicine. Now you've seen that with the lockdown norms and social distancing norms, telemedicine became a very important rescue. It came to the rescue of people who wanted healthcare and who could not go out. So e-Sanjeevani OPD was one of the initiatives in telemedicine, and Maharashtra has performed very well when it comes to e-Sanjeevani OPD. You can just Google the figure as to how many cases Maharashtra resolved through e-Sanjeevani OPD. But I think Maharashtra is at the top when it comes to e-Sanjeevani OPD. So telemedicine is the future, and we have to explore that part as well. Other thing that we realized even during the pandemic is that rural health infrastructure has to be robust, has to be firm. so that we can, tackle the future pandemics, the future healthcare problems. So rural health infrastructure, again, a very important point. Then destigmatizing mental health and broadening its horizons, opening up, talking about mental health, uh, discussing about mental health, helping people come out of it, helping people get help. So, that is what we talk about when we talk about mental health. And this, the last thing, awareness about fitness and exercise. I've already talked about it, but awareness has to be created, and we have to work on that front, wherein we create awareness. Like, there are marathons, there are different kinds of initiatives. So you run for something, run for some initiatives, so different runs, marathon runs, all such things have to be promoted. Yoga sessions, so there were different yoga sessions during the International Yoga Day. So such things have to be promoted on a large scale. Right now we are promoting it, but we need to promote it on a different scale. Like, we have to promote it at a large scale. So that is about the way forward. I hope you've understood, but I have tried to cover most of the points and I've made it very easy for you to go about it. But I want you to add some more initiatives, some more innovative strategies to tackle the problems of health. And I want to see how innovative can you be when you write the essay. I'll give you the topic at the end. It's not going to be just health, but I'll tell you the topic. So, yes. Now let's come to the pandemic specific part. There are few things that I want you to go through when you talk about pandemic specific. So, COVID pandemic, this is one thing that I want you to mention whenever you talk about pandemic, because it was not just a health crisis, it was a crisis at different levels, at many different levels. So, COVID pandemic is a far greater social, economic, and political phenomenon rather than merely a biomedical one, due to its ill effects on lives and livelihood. Okay, so it affected lives. Definitely, we lost many people, we lost our closed ones, but it also affected livelihood. So, the pandemic is turning into one of the worst humanitarian crises in the recent human history. So, basically, it went from health crisis to humanitarian crisis because of the impact that it had. So whenever you mention pandemic, definitely you have to talk about health, but you also have to mention just in one line. Like, even if you just write these four lines, the examiner knows that you know that pandemic is not just about health. After that, you can talk all about health, but you have to mention what the pandemic has affected and what all it has impacted. So these four lines are going to play a very important role in your essay. So do not miss out on these lines. Then you also can mention the number of cases. I'm not going to give you the figures. You have to find out the figures because they keep changing every day. So I want you to be updated with the cases and the number of cases and the number of cases around the world also. You can mention one or two countries which suffered badly. The European countries were under peril. So you can mention those countries, and you can mention, even if you don't mention the figures, you have to mention that even developed countries struggled in the pandemic. So those things you can mention. So mention the cases, people losing lives, how many people lost lives in India, you know mention about the job loss or economic slowdown. If it's a broad topic like pandemic, you can mention all these things because pandemic has affected all the sectors. So if they ask you pandemic in general, you can mention about the job loss, the economic slowdown, the businesses that suffered, the inequality which rose because people lost their jobs, because they lost all their savings. There was inequality, and the inequality has been rising to a next level now. Other thing that was highlighted during the pandemic was the domestic violence cases, which were rising to the next level. So these are some things that you should remember while writing an essay on pandemic. Then management of pandemic. Now, issues that we faced while managing the pandemic. Protocol fatigue is the first one. Just go to the slide of management of pandemic and issues that we faced. So first thing was protocol fatigue. What does protocol fatigue mean? So people followed mask and everything for 1 year. But after that they got irritated, or they were very frustrated, and they could not follow the same thing. So it is a human tendency. Even when we see even if we, when we see our COVID warriors, first they in the first wave they used to wear all the PPE kits and everything, but now they just wear a mask because it's called protocol fatigue. Like, you cannot keep on doing one thing which you cannot keep on uh, how do I put it, like you cannot go on following a particular protocol for a longer time. Wearing a mask, it's not something that you are used to. It's not something that you enjoy. It's out of compulsion. So if something is out of compulsion, it is difficult to go on for a very long time, when, especially when you're not used to it, when it's not voluntarily, your choice. So that is what I mean by protocol fatigue. But that should come a little later. I've put it in the very first thing, but I think that should come later. The very first thing you should mention is, because we have suffered a worst second wave, I think you should mention poor preparedness. Okay, we were not even prepared during the first wave. Bad mismanagement. There was a migrant crisis. There was a Shramik trains incident. uh, many mismanagement happened during the pandemic. So you can mention these incidents. Okay, migrant crisis, people traveling on their foot, people walking all the way to their homes in distant places. So this is what you can mention when we talk about poor preparedness. So we were not prepared. We did not have beds, we did not have oxygen cylinders, we did not have medicines, we did not have doctors. So we were not prepared. So that is poor preparedness should be the first thing that should come. Second is poor implementation of guidelines. So there was a lot of mismanagement because there was no coordination when we were implementing the lockdowns as well. The ground level personnel did not know who to let go and who to stop, who to restrict. There were many incidents where, people who were in essential services, who were giving out essential services, were stopped by the policemen. They had to take a pass, they had to do a lot of things. So in the initial years, in the initial days of pandemic, there was poor implementation of guidelines. So that is the second thing that you should write. Then you can talk about the super spreader events like marriages, people not following COVID appropriate behavior. There were election rallies. There were all such events which led to the spread of the disease even more. The other thing is inadequate health infrastructure. Then the main important thing is also variants. It's more of variants. Even variants play a very important role. If there is a variant like Delta or Delta Plus, then obviously it is going to spread no matter how much precaution we take or how much of COVID appropriate behavior we have. But if the variant is of concern, then there will be some problems. So variant is also an important thing that you have to mention. Then asymptomatic persons, because it's because of the asymptomatic people that the pandemic has spread. There are many people who are not aware that they are COVID positive, but they spread it to the other people, and that is how it transmits. So that is one thing which has led to the transmission of the pandemic. Now, these are very few issues that I have told you, but I want you to go through the issues. I want you to add to these issues, like from a second wave point of view. I want you to add from how we are, prepared for the third wave. So, after issues, I want you to go to the steps taken by us. Now, this is something that you have to do. I am not going to spoon feed you on this thing. You have to write steps taken by you, steps taken by the government, steps taken by us. And I also want you to write the steps that we can take for pandemic. So this is an assignment that I am giving you. You have to write pandemic specific steps taken by us and steps that we can take in the future. Now, steps that we can take. Now, I have already discussed the steps that we can take. These, if you come to the way forward slide, you will know that the steps that we can take are already discussed. These are also these can be very pandemic specific as well, because it talks about enabling preventive care, bringing behavioral change, cooperative federalism, more funding, decentralization, mainstreaming ayush, telemedicine, rural health, destigmatizing mental health, awareness about fitness and exercise. So even in pandemic we have seen people who are fit, in the sense who are a bit healthy, who do not have comorbidities, have, many of them have suffered, but most of them were healthy and they could, fight COVID very well. So promoting fitness and exercise is important. So I've already given you the steps that we can take, but I want you to go more into detail and come up with some good steps. Like you have to talk about vaccination, how vaccination is going to help us, and how we should vaccinate people, and what should be the way we vaccinate people. So, talk about vaccination when it is pandemic specific. Talk about COVID appropriate behavior, how it is important to be followed even today, why we need to follow it. Third thing you can talk about is how the events should be, limited. Even when we have less number of cases, still super spreader events like marriages, functions, rallies need to be, restricted, need to be limited to a certain level. So talk about that when we talk about pandemic specific. And talk about the private sector when you talk about the pandemic. Do talk about the private sector, because the private sector had charged people a lot, and there should be some sort of regulation when we talk about the private sector. So at that one point I want you to talk about the private sector when you talk about pandemic specific as well. I'll also give you some more data if you all. I have some health specific data. Okay, I have some health specific data, but I am not getting it now. So I'll just put it on the group and then you can go through the data. So the topic for you is health is wealth. I want you all to write an essay on health is wealth. Now, it should be from every point of view. It should be from the point of view of pandemic, the point of view of health in general, and I want you to write a 400 words essay on health is wealth. So your topic for today is health is wealth, and the other assignment that I've given you is steps that we have taken during pandemic and steps that we can take to tackle the pandemic. So that is going to be the two assignments that you do. You have to write health is wealth. You can send your essays to me, but what I want you to do is just write the essay and self-analyze it. I think that will be more helpful to you. So just do that. Write the topic health is wealth. And now you can ask me questions if you have. So be very specific to the lecture. Ask me lecture specific doubts if you have any, and if you have any other doubts, you can just message me and I'll get back to you. Nikhil, you can go ahead and ask your question.
There are 2 to 3 questions of my ma'am.
Okay. Okay.
The first question is generally whenever we are dealing with a particular topic, there is a case study. And suppose if I am doing a essay on the terrorism, and if I am mentioning the case study of death of the Balakot strike, and in that case we have some negative impact on India. So that can I mention that which is generally negative?
Yes, you can mention negatives of the impact, but show it in more of a positive light. So, write 2 points positive about it and just write 1 point negative. So, there's a proper balance when you write it.
Okay, and next question is that generally whenever we are talking about health and pandemic, like some issues like ASHA workers, health of the ASHA workers,
Right.
like and vaccinations of the vaccination problems or rumors regarding the vaccination or initiatives of Maharashtra government like माझे कुटुंब माझी जबाबदारी or like Maharashtra Mahatma Phule Jan Arogya scheme. These are, can I add these institutes to my essay?
Yes. See, today I covered from a India point of view, but I definitely want you all to add the Maharashtra specific. म्हणजे जे आपलं ज्योतिबा फुले असेल किंवा जे आपण स्कीम्स आहेत, you have to add those in your essays. Don't add too many schemes. As I said, just limit yourself. Add 1-2 schemes of India and add 1 or 2 schemes of Maharashtra and just limit it there. Okay, so start writing the essay, and once you start writing you will understand की किती लिहायचं आहे आणि किती कोणत्या गोष्टीवर फोकस करायचं आहे. सो ते आपल्याला तेव्हाच कळेल when you write essay. So that is why I want you all to write essay. Now the topic for you is health is wealth. Now I want to see how you all interpret it. Okay, it's not simple health. So how do you interpret health is wealth? So keep writing. That is my suggestion to you.
And the third question is, ma'am, last question. When generally we have to stick to the limit of 400 words. So can I go beyond that 400 words? And whenever we have to consolidate the data within 400 or 500 words, how can I manage to my all the points should be covered and as well as word limit should not be exceeded? How can I manage that consolidation?
About the word limit, you can extend to 500 to 600 words. It's fine, but I still tell you to be around, be around 500 words. I wouldn't suggest you to go beyond that, but you can go till 600. But that is the max. You should not go beyond that. Now, how to concise this? If you see my introduction, if you see how I've written the introduction, it is very simple, but it comprises everything that I want to talk about. So you should know how to comprise everything in small sentences. Now if you mention about a scheme, just write the scheme name. You don't have to explain the scheme. So when the limit is 400, you should not go on explaining everything. जी गोष्ट एक्सप्लेन करायची आहे ती डेफिनेटली करा, बिकॉज इश्यूज आणि चॅलेंजेसमध्ये आपल्याला एक्सप्लेन करायचंच आहे. बट तुम्ही जेव्हा स्कीम्स आणि हे सगळं मेन्शन करता ना, स्कीम्स किंवा इनिशिएटिव्स, ते गोष्टी जास्त एक्सप्लेन करत जाऊ नका. म्हणजे इवन इफ यू जस्ट राईट आयुष्मान भारत, दे नो आयुष्मान भारत काय आहे, त्याला तुम्ही एक्सप्लेन करायची गरज नाही आहे. सो ज्या गोष्टीमध्ये गरज नाही आहे ते एक्सप्लेन नका करू, जस्ट मेन्शन दोज थिंग्स. आणि ज्या गोष्टी एक्सप्लेन करायला पाहिजे त्याच्यावर यूज युअर वर्ड लिमिट. सो दॅट इज वॉट आय वुड सजेस्ट.
And sorry, ma'am, last question. The whenever we generally we yesterday has speak about the different approaches to consolidate this essay that body that is like a social, economical, political approach, or past, present, future approach. Then what approach can be used for this type of issues like health and pandemic?
Health should be more of sectoral. म्हणजे health in general, mental health. Kiva, the second approach that I have told you just now is you focus on the introduction part. Your introduction, as I told you, it should be something specific to pandemic kiva whatever incident. एखादा incident तुम्ही सांगू शकता की good you asked this question. I'll just repeat the thing. एखादा इन्सिडेंट की तुम्ही कोणाला तरी स्ट्रगल करताना बघितलं की कोणाला तरी ॲम्ब्युलन्सच नाही मिळाली आणि हाऊ ही लॉस्ट हिज लाईफ बिकॉज ही कुड नॉट गेट ॲम्ब्युलन्स, अशी एखादी स्टोरी तुम्ही तिथे लिहू शकता. दॅट कॅन बी युअर इंट्रोडक्शन. द सेकंड बॉडी पार्ट कॅन बी इश्यूज, युअर चॅलेंजेस आणि युअर सोल्युशन्स. ठीक आहे. सो हेल्थमध्ये दिस इज द व्हेरी सिम्पल वे टू अप्रोच इश्यूज, चॅलेंजेस आणि the solutions म्हणजे steps taken by the government and steps that you think we should take in the future. So that will be your vision आणि conclude with your vision. म्हणजे जे काही तुम्हाला सांगायचं आहे ते छोटं एखादं लास्ट पॅरामध्ये सांगून just conclude that vision. म्हणजे if you started with a story of ambulance, you can end with a story of की असं कोणासोबतच व्हायला नको पुढे म्हणून आपण असं असं करायला हवं. So that is how you can end the essay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Vishal, you have a question. Vishal, you can ask your question. Vishal Mari, you can ask your question. Shubham Patil, you can ask your question. Shubham, just unmute yourself and ask your question.
हॅलो मॅम.
Hello.
हॅलो. हा मॅम, समजा आपण हेल्थ इश्यूचा टॉपिक आहे, समजा तर डाटा किती देणं अपेक्षित आहे, की समजा स्टॅटिक डाटा?
जे मी सांगितलं ना इम्पॉर्टंट होतं म्हणजे पर्सेंट ऑफ GDP दॅट वी आर स्पेंडिंग ऑन हेल्थ आणि द पर्सेंट दॅट वी आर सपोज टू स्पेंड. दीज आर द थिंग्स विच आर व्हेरी इम्पॉर्टंट. मग तुमचं जर मेटर्नल मोर्टॅलिटी रेट जर तुम्हाला सांगता आलं तर ते सांगा. आणि द थर्ड थिंग यू शुड मेन्शन व्हेरी इम्पॉर्टंट इज द डॉक्टर आणि पॉप्युलेशन रेशिओ जे मी तुम्हाला दिलं आहे. सो 2-3 ज्या गोष्टी मी मेन्शन केलेल्या आहेत तेवढ्याच मेन्शन करणं अपेक्षित आहे तिथे पण. ओके
ओके मॅम.
हॅलो.
हॅलो. येस विशाल.
मॅम, माझा क्वेश्चन असा होता की प्रॅक्टिससाठी एसे चूज कसा करायचा, बिकॉज हे आज जे 2 टॉपिक घेतले, हेल्थ अँड पॅन्डेमिक इज व्हेरी इम्पॉर्टंट. बट आता एक महिन्याच्या समजा 1 महिना चालू झालेला पाकिस्तान अफगाणिस्तान आणि तालिबान यांचा इश्यू आणि त्याच्यानंतर म्हणजे महाराष्ट्रात चालू असलेला 1 ते 1.5 वर्षाचा गव्हर्नरचा इश्यू, म्हणजे याच्यावर जास्त फोकस इंटरनॅशनल रिलेशन वरती द्यायचा प्रॅक्टिसच्या वेळेस, की इंडियावरती द्यायचा, की ऍज अ MPSC म्हणून महाराष्ट्रावरती द्यायचा, कशावरती जास्त?
फोकस तुमचा इंडिया आणि महाराष्ट्राचा असायला पाहिजे. मेनली इंडिया. ओके. मेनली इंडिया आणि मग थोडंसं कन्साईजमध्ये महाराष्ट्र. बट इंटरनॅशनल मी कुठे सांगेल, वेन यू शुड बी इंटरनॅशनल वेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट टेररिझम. कारण टेररिझम इज नॉट ओनली इंडियन प्रॉब्लेम, इट इज ऑल्सो अबाउट प्रॉक्सी टेररिझम, म्हणजे बऱ्याच गोष्टी येतात टेररिझममध्ये. जर असा टॉपिक असेल तर यू हॅव टू डेफिनेटली मेन्शन द इंटरनॅशनल इम्पॅक्ट्स आणि इंटरनॅशनल एम्फसिस ऑफ दॅट टॉपिक. बट इफ यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट हेल्थ तर आपल्याला आधी आपल्या हेल्थचं बघावं लागेल, म्हणजे आपल्याला कंट्री स्पेसिफिक राहावं लागेल. त्यात तुम्ही 1-2 गोष्टी मेन्शन करू शकता की ह्या कंट्रीने खूप चांगलं केलं आहे, ह्या कंट्रीने असं असं इनिशिएटिव्ह केला आहे, तो आपण पण इम्प्लिमेंट करू शकतो. बट डू नॉट गो इंटरनॅशनल वेन वी टॉक अबाउट हेल्थ, एज्युकेशन, विमेन एम्पॉवरमेंट. हे जे टॉपिक्स आहेत ना, एन्व्हायरमेंट असेल, आता एन्व्हायरमेंटचं टॉपिक यू कॅन गो इंटरनॅशनल बिकॉज वी हॅव पॅरिस अग्रीमेंट, वी हॅव इनिशिएटिव्ज विच हॅव टू बी इम्प्लिमेंटेड ॲट अ इंटरनॅशनल लेवल. सो ते इंटरनॅशनल लेवलवर जोपर्यंत होणार नाही तोपर्यंत त्याचा इम्पॅक्टच होऊ शकत नाही, बिकॉज the countries like China and US are the ones who are emitting a lot of carbon dioxide. म्हणजे त्याच्यात त्या countries are at the top. So when there are topics like environment, there are topics like terrorism, go international. But when there are topics like health, education, be very country specific. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, last 2 questions now. Okay, T, you can ask your question. Just unmute yourself and ask your question. Anybody has any questions? Or else we'll end the session here. Okay, I think I have been concise and I have briefly told you about how to approach, and I've also given you the assignment. I want you all to practice health is wealth, it's a topic, and also come out with the steps we have taken during the pandemic and the steps that we should take according to you. Be very innovative in your approach and give out something that can be inspiring for others. अँड ट्राय टू थिंक आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स. थोडं 10-15 मिनटं हा टॉपिक घेऊन विचार करा की व्हॉट आर वी लॅकिंग वेन वी टॉक अबाउट हेल्थ, व्हॉट इज इट दॅट वी शुड डू, what is it that can change the future of health infrastructure, healthcare in our country. So I want you to brainstorm for 15 minutes and then start writing your essay with a time limit. And use the pointers that I've given you, but add your own things, because your own things will be the thing that will create an edge. because me je dile te most of you all will write it, but what you think and what your own special thing is, that will be the thing that will make you different from others. So I want you all to brainstorm and think about it. One last question, Somnath, if you want you can ask and then we'll end the session. Just unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay, I think I'll end here. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I hope I could.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
I have a question, ma'am.
Yes.
We are discuss the issues and challenges. Can we explore these points in our essay writing?
Yes.
All the details.
Yes.
Example, the population accessibility, doctor to population ratio.
Yes, you can definitely explore it, but keep the limit to 1 to 2 sentences. That's it. Okay. For
Okay, ma'am.
every subtopic that I've given you, keep the limit to 1 or 2 sentences. That's it. No, not more than that. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Another question is that, madam, when we are specific to the pandemic, is it right to write the history of the pandemic, earlier pandemic?
You can just mention in 1 or 2 lines that pandemics have been happening since this and this. We already have had plague, we suffered plague,
Okay,
and
ma'am.
still we were not prepared. So pandemics are not going to stop. असं तुम्ही लिहू शकता, बट पूर्ण हिस्ट्री नका लिहू की ह्या इयरमध्ये हे आलं आणि त्या इयरमध्ये ते आलं आणि मग असं झालं. They don't want history. They
Okay.
want what you can do with health and how we can improve health and how we can
Okay, okay,
tackle
ma'am.
pandemic. That is the main focus of the essay. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome. Okay, so we'll stop here. I've already given you the PPT.